Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the best supports for patch 6.18. So I haven't done a support list in quite some time now. It's probably been around like a month or maybe even 2 months. The support meta hasn't really changed at all though, and that's kind of the main reason why I haven't updated this list in a pretty long time. There haven't really been any like major buffs or major nerfs to any of the support champions, and therefore the list really isn't too much different from the last one I did a few patches ago. But with that being said guys, let's get into the video. So first up at the number 5 spot here is Zyra. So right now Zyra is in a pretty good spot in my opinion. She's a really good lane dominant support. Her laning phase is probably the best for any support just because she's got so much poke damage with her Q and with her plants, and it just allows her to have a really nice laning phase. It allows her to zone the enemy AD carry from CS really nicely, and if they do end up going back in for CS, once you do have them chunked down, you can just root them and then burst them down really quickly. She also does have a load of damage for support champion. A lot of Zyra players end up out damaging their laners a lot of the time. I see support Zyra players sometimes even topping the charts in damage dealt per game. So she's a really good damage support champion, and if that's your playstyle or if that's the kind of support champion you want to play, then I would definitely recommend picking up Zyra. She's also just a very tilting support to play against. I know that when I'm playing AD carry against a Zyra, I just feel like I can't lane, and it's really hard to just move in for CS because I know that she's just gonna poke me really easily with her Q, or I could just end up getting rooted. Now, as for when you should look to pick Zyra, if your team does lack damage, she is a great pick in that situation since she does do a lot of it. She's also a pretty good pick against a meta jungler right now, being Zac. I've seen Zac so much these past few weeks. He's pretty much picked or banned right now in solo queue. So if the enemy team does lock Zac, Zyra is a pretty good pick against him. If he tries to dive in on your AD carry, then you can throw your ultimate down and you can allow your AD carry to escape. Now, when should you not pick Zyra? This is a new segment that I am doing in these videos now. It was requested in one of my last videos that I did. I think it might have been the jungle tier list video. I feel like talking about when you should not pick the champion is also a good idea, and I'm going to be doing this from now on. So you should not pick Zyra, in my opinion, if the enemy team does lock a Blitzcrank or a Soraka. The reason for Blitzcrank is because if you get hooked by the Blitzcrank, you're pretty much dead. You're a very squishy champion, and unless you're really confident on your Zyra, I would try to avoid that matchup. Now, as for Soraka can just heal up your poke really easily, so that's kind of another risky matchup as well. Of course, if you are a good Zyra player and you are confident on her, then you can still pick her in those matchups. Now, also, you shouldn't pick her if your team does lack engage. Zyra isn't really a good engage support champion. She's more of a disengage support. So if you don't have like a Sion in the top lane, or you don't have like a Zac in the jungle, and you're lacking that engage, then I would not pick her in that situation. Next up here is going to be Janna. So in my opinion, Janna is very similar to Zyra in the sense that they both are very strong peel supports. I would definitely say that Janna does have a little bit stronger peel than Zyra though. I would even call her the best peel support in the game just because she does have her ultimate, which can completely reset a fight. It could just knock the enemies out and completely negate them from engaging on your back line. She's also great at like keeping her AD carry safe, and she's also great right now because we're seeing a lot of low mobility AD carries being played. Jinx, Kog'Maw, Miss Fortune, they're 3 of the top tier AD carries right now, along with Twitch in my opinion. So Janna is great paired up with any of them because if they get caught in a team fight, she can easily just peel for them and allow them to reposition. She is also very good against dive comms, and she's also a good pick against Zac. So we are seeing a lot of Zac right now. Vi also has a very high pick rate, so if they do lock a dive champion, Janna is always a good choice. Her shield is also great for trading in the laning phase. Whenever you do place your shield on your AD carry, then they're pretty much guaranteed to win the trade every single time. Now, as for when you should look to pick Janna, of course, if they do have a Rengar, a Kha'Zix, a Zac, or a Vi, any of those dive champions, I would definitely look to pick her, and I would have her up there in your priority for support champions just because she does do a really good job at countering them. And also, if your team does lack disengage, she's a great pick in that situation. Now, when should you look to avoid picking Janna? If your team does lack engage, I would not pick her in that situation. Janna really doesn't provide any strong engage for her team. So if your team is lacking engage, then I would pick someone maybe like a Blitzcrank or a Braum or Thresh, someone that can do a good job at starting a fight. And also, if your team does not have a tank and you've got like a squishy top, a squishy jungle, then I wouldn't pick her in that situation either. Next up is going to be Blitzcrank. So Blitz has stayed a really strong pick for support pretty much all season long. He's just a support champion that can completely snowball a game out of control in the first few minutes if he can hit that hook. I'd say like a good Blitzcrank player can just carry so hard, and if they can just land that one hook in the laning phase, then the lane is pretty much won for your team. When you're playing Blitz, I would actually recommend taking Ignite and running AP runes on him, because it will just allow you to have that really strong all-in if you do hit that hook, and especially if you are playing against someone like a Soraka or a Sona, look to focus them, look to get that hook on them, and burst them down for first blood. He's also very strong once you do hit level 6. His all-in damage is actually really good, like with his Q, E, and ultimate, and if you are playing with a bursty support or someone that can follow up your damage, then you're pretty much guaranteed a kill once you do hit 6. He also does counter a lot of the meta supports like Soraka and Sona. They are two of the most picked support champions, and Blitz does a really good job against them, because if he does land that one hook against them, they're pretty much dead. As for when you should look to pick Blitz, you should definitely look to pick him if they do have a Soraka, a Sona, a Nami, any of those squishy range support champions. Also, if they do have a squishy enemy team comp in general, it's always a good choice to pick Blitz, because you really don't have to pick and choose who you need to hook in a team fight. If the enemy team does have like a tankier team comp, then you're only gonna be able to hook like the AD carry and the mid laner, and getting a hook on like the tank champion, you're not really gonna want to do that. So if the enemy team does have a squishy comp, then even if you do hook like the top laner or the jungler, if they're squishy, you can burst them down really easily and just get the advantage for your team. Now, once you do not look to pick Blitzcrank, you shouldn't pick him if the enemy team does have a pretty tanky team comp, because like getting a hook on a tank is really not going to do too much, and you're just not really going to perform very well on Blitzcrank, in my opinion, if they do have a tankier comp. Also, if your team does lack disengage and the enemy team does have like a very hard engage comp, then I would not pick him in that situation. I would pick someone like a Janna or a Zyra. And also, if they do have a Braum, a Taric, or a Morgana, then those champions do pretty well against Blitzcrank. Braum does pretty well because even if Blitz gets a hook on the Braum, then what Braum can do is he can just put his shield up and negate a lot of the damage, and if the AD carry gets hooked, then Braum can just jump on his AD carry and put his E up and just disengage. For Taric does a pretty good job, because if Taric hooks the Blitz or his AD carry, then what Taric can do is he can just stun and disengage. And then for Morgana's Black Shield does a very good job at countering Blitzcrank. So at the number 2 spot here is Sona. So after Sona did receive those buffs a few patches ago, she's been a really top tier support. She's got a very strong kit, her poke in lane is pretty good, she scales really well into the mid to late game. Once you do get some CDR on Sona and you have a little bit of AP, your heals are absolutely insane, and if you do end up fighting like extended fights and the fight does last for more than like 15 seconds, then you're probably going to win that fight every single time, just because you're going to be able to heal up your team really nicely with your W. She also does have the movement speed steroid with her E, which allows her to keep her AD carry nice and mobile in those team fights, and it just allows her to keep her team mobile in general. She can also have the ability to engage or disengage with her ultimate. If you are ahead as Sona, never be afraid to look for those flash ults on the enemy AD carry or mid laner if they are caught out, and if your AD carry is getting dived on in a team fight, then just use your ultimate to peel for them and keep them safe. Now, as for when you should look to pick Sona, you should definitely look to pick her if the enemy team does have a pokier team comp. So Nidalee is pretty meta right now, and Sona does do a pretty good job against her because she can just heal up her poke damage. Now, when should you not look to pick Sona? Sona is a pretty good pick into a lot of matchups, but it's best not to pick her if the enemy team does have a hard CC support like a Leona or a Blitzcrank, or someone that can just lock you down really easily. If you do end up getting caught out by like a Leona E or a Blitzcrank Q, then you're pretty much dead unless you do have your flash up. She is also a little bit weaker against like a heavy assassin comp. She is a squishy support, so if she does get caught out by like a Zed or a Yasuo, then she is going to die pretty quickly. And to round out the top 5 for this patch, I have Soraka. So why should you look to pick Soraka? Soraka is a sustain monster. Her heals are just absolutely crazy, like in team fights and in the laning phase as well. She can do a really good job at covering up her AD carries mistakes. A lot of like newer AD carries, they end up taking like free poke damage in the laning phase, or they just end up losing out on trades. But with Soraka, it's just really easy for you to just heal them back up to full HP, and even if they do get caught out or if they do take a bad trade, then you can just cover that up really nicely with your heals. She's also very annoying to play against. Playing against the Soraka, you just have to focus the Soraka, because if you don't, then you're probably gonna lose that one or that 2v2 every time, and you're probably going to lose the team fight every time as well, just because her heals are insane and they're just going to keep her team really healthy. She also does have the AoE silence, which is super strong if used correctly. For example, in a team fight, if someone like a Katarina jumps in, or someone like a Vel'Koz starts channeling his ultimate, Soraka can just place down her silence and completely negate those high damage abilities. So just make sure you are using Soraka's silence in the right situation in a team fight, and don't just waste it, because it is a very strong ability. And let's not forget that she does have the AoE point and click heal with her ultimate. Her ultimate is just such a good ability for team fighting. It takes no skill to use at all, and you get a free heal for your team, so it just makes her team fighting really strong. Now, when should you look to pick Soraka? You should look to pick her if the enemy team does have a poke comp, like a Nidalee, a Jace, or an Ezreal. You should also look to pick her against like other passive supports that aren't going to look to hard engage on you. And as for when you should look to maybe not pick Soraka, if the enemy team does have a heavy assassin comp, then it's not the best idea to pick her in that situation, since you can get caught out pretty easily. And also, if the enemy team does log a hard engage support like a Leona, a Nautilus, or a Blitzcrank, if you aren't confident in your Soraka, then I probably wouldn't pick her in that situation. And to round out the video, the honorable mentions for this patch are going to be Sion, Braum, and Taric. So Sion is definitely a pretty cheese support pick, or he isn't a support pick that we see a whole lot, but the times that I have seen Sion support played, he's done really well. People just don't expect the damage that he can put out, and they don't expect the crowd control coming out from him, so he can do a really good job in the laning phase. Once you do it level 6 as Sion, you have really good engage, so definitely look to take advantage of that. Out of these 3 supports though, I would definitely say that Braum is the one that I prefer the most, or when I'm playing AD carry, I like to have a Braum support with me, just because I really like his passive. I really like the fact that he does have good engage as well as disengage, and he can also keep the AD carry very safe just with his ultimate, with his passive, and then he can also soak a lot of damage in team fights with his unbreakable. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then don't forget to leave a like. Subscribe if you guys have not already. So thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.